Good day to all our students. Today I'll be coming to you with module number 6, which is the fraud in sport. Basically, we'll be looking at the various sections of this module. As you might be aware that there are many issues we have around fraud and in our sport in South Africa and the world in general. So today I will bring to you the module in video, and hopefully after the module you'll be able to complete some of the portfolio of evidence questions. But what we'll do in support of our students, I will email you the presentation, the PowerPoint, the slides, so that you can go through them at your own time and pace. And also this video, you'll find it to be posted on our YouTube channel, and you'll also find it in our Facebook page. Hope you enjoyed the presentation and come along with me. Now, we look at fraud, and this module is module 6, and we'll look at just the first section or the first chapter of this module, which has about 6 sections today. And hopefully on another day, I'll send you the second segment of the module. Now, this segment or this chapter of the module has got 6 sections. So the first section, I'll look at the reasons why employees commit fraud in a workplace. And section number 2, I'll look at the various ways we could use to prevent or to reduce fraud in our workplaces. Section number 3, I'll look at the corruption, the scandals that we have had in our sport in South Africa and also in the world. And section number 4, we'll look at the consequences. So when somebody has committed fraud, what happens to the company and what happens to that person. Section number 5, we'll look at the effects of corruption in the company. And section number 6, we'll look at how to conduct an investigation around fraud. If somebody is charged of fraud or somebody is allegations of fraud around the person, or the person is being implicated in a fraud scandal, what do we do, or how do we investigate that person? Now, let's look at the first thing, which is the definition of fraud. Now, fraud basically is a misconduct in a workplace whereby somebody is using deception or somebody is deceiving the manager in order to get an unfair advantage. Now, that person could submit fraudulent documents. That person could speak a lie in order to get an advantage over other staff members. Now, section 1, we look at reasons why an employee or an athlete, why would somebody commit fraud in a workplace? Now, there are 3 main reasons that you will see in your learner guide. Now, the first reason you see in your learner guide is pressure. Now, many people have stolen because of pressure, maybe pressure of bills at home, maybe the person's salary is not enough. Now, the person feels that he needs to earn more money, so that person goes to steal from the workplace. And reason number 2, they call it rationalization. That's when the person feels that the company owes him or her some money. So the person steals from the company because he feels that the company is making a lot of money in comparison to what he is earning. So he wants to compensate himself. And reason number 3 could be some people, they see fraud as an opportunity. Or maybe the person is working with money, so he sees an opportunity that, oh, how can I be counting money every day and yet I don't have money? So they steal because the opportunity presents itself. Now, another thing I want us to look at in this section are the other types of fraud in a workplace. Now, fraud in a workplace could include many things, such as the theft of business property. Now, business property does not have to be anything tangible. Maybe somebody has stolen intellectual property, or a person has stolen a document, or a person has stolen a software that belongs to the company and has gone to sell it, or a person has copied an important software, an important folder, or an important document, or somebody has or stolen money. There are many things that a person can do as a form of fraud in a company. The second way that we can commit fraud, that's when somebody is abusing vacation time. You've seen it that somebody takes leave, and when the person comes back from leave, he doesn't log in the leave form to the system. Now, what happens is that the person has stolen time from the company. And now remember that time is equal to money. If you've stolen time, you've stolen money from the organization. The third way a person can commit fraud, that's claiming for benefits that an employee is not entitled to. That's when maybe the person has claimed travel allowance and the person has not traveled, but he is claiming for travel allowance. Or the person is claiming airtime when he should not be claiming for airtime. Or the person is claiming for company cell phone when he should not be claiming for company cell phone. Or the person is claiming car allowance when he does not have any car. So there are many things that people can do to commit fraud. Now they commit fraud so that they can top up their income. Now, some people, they can commit fraud by taking advantage. Sometimes when you travel for the company, some people can book in 4 nights, whereas they are sleeping for 3 nights. Some people can decide that they will claim more kilometers than the kilometers they've traveled. So if you look at all these things, they are forms of fraud and corruption, and they make the companies bankrupt. Now, section number 2 of fraud will be the prevention of fraud in a company. Now, fraud can be prevented, and fraud can be reduced or cut down or minimized greatly in an organization. Now, this section will look at the various things that an organization can perhaps embark on in order to prevent or cut down fraud. Now, the first thing you can do is to know your employees. Now, knowing your employees, it means that if maybe you've got a staff member who has a criminal record, now what it could mean that person must be watched closely, or it could mean that that person must be removed from that area of temptation. Now, if you don't know your staff members, you can place somebody in a very sensitive area whereby maybe he deals with money. And of course, if you don't know that, that person can be tempted to steal from the organization. The second thing you can do to prevent fraud is to make staff members aware of the consequences. That's why all companies must have a code of conduct and policies. Now, people who commit fraud in companies, they must be punished. And we need to find a way to make fellow employees aware that in this company, if you are accused or you are convicted of fraud, you'll be punished. Now, once that information is out there, everybody sort of becomes afraid to steal from the organization. The next thing we can do to cap or to minimize fraud in a company is to implement internal controls. Now, as you know that if there are no controls, people, they do whatever they feel they can do. One of the things we have seen companies doing, they've put the biometric. For example, when you enter the building, you may need to use a finger. When you go home, you may need to check out. You may need to sign a register. There are many things that you can do to make people aware that fraud is not welcome here. Number 4, you have to monitor the leave forms. When staff members go on leave, they have to sign off. When they come back, they have to sign in. So there are many things that can be done around the leave system. And number 5, you can minimize fraud by hiring experts, meaning you need to hire people who know what they are doing, and you need to hire people who can monitor and manage staff members that commit fraud. For example, you may have a legal department that deals with issues of fraud and corruption in your company. Number 6 is to live a corporate culture. Now, you have to induct your staff on a good corporate culture, meaning that everybody should know that you don't have to steal, meaning there should be a culture of honesty and transparency so that everybody would know that in this company, fraud or stealing is not the culture. And the last one is people should be aware that the building has got some sort of controls or detection. For example, once people see that there are cameras, there are scanners, immediately they become afraid of stealing from the company. But when they know that there are no controls in place, they can easily steal because they know that the company has no camera, the company has got no forms of control. And section number 3, which I'll leave it for you to go and research, is to look at the recent and corruption scandals in sport in South Africa or in the world in general. Now, what I will do, I won't present on this section. I will leave you to go and check the local newspapers. You can also go online and look on the local and international scandals that maybe players, you can choose any sports. It could be soccer, it could be volleyball, it could be netball. Go online and check on the scandals that players or athletes have committed. And of course, any information that you find there, it will be very helpful to you and to us. Section number 4, we look at the consequences of fraud. Now, if somebody commits fraud, what do you think will happen to the person? Several things can happen to that person. The first thing that could happen, that person could be charged. The person can have a criminal record attached to his name. So if I steal from company A and I'm convicted of fraud or corruption, there will be a stigma or a permanent tag next to my name, meaning wherever I go, it will always show that I once stolen from company number A. So that thing will always be attached to me. Now, many companies don't employ somebody who has a criminal record. We need to be aware of that. So one of the reasons why we should not steal is to be aware that once you steal from an organization, there will be a permanent criminal record next to your name, and nobody wants to be associated with that. The second consequence of fraud, you can be jailed depending on what you have stolen and who you have stolen from. Many companies, they can convict a person and they can come up with a court case. They can send you to the police. You can be arrested for a few days, for a few months, for a few years. And sometimes, if you are lucky, you can be released out on a bail, which can be very expensive. And of course, the third one consequence will be fines. If you are lucky enough, you are not jailed, the company might fine you. They might fine you money. They might fine you your leave, depending on what you have done. Number 4, it can be something very extreme and unfortunate. It could be loss of employment. Some companies, once you have stolen or you have committed a fraud, depending on the nature of your crime, some companies might dismiss you immediately, meaning you'll be out of a job. And now many companies, like I said earlier on, they might not want to employ somebody who's charged of corruption. And the final consequence of fraud could be reputational damage. Now, this works in 2 ways. The company might suffer reputational damage, or you as a staff member, your reputation might be tainted. Like I said earlier on, once companies find out that you have a criminal record, nobody might want to hire you. So that can affect your reputation forever. And section number 6, we look at the effects of corruption on the organization. Now, what happens when organizations experience a lot of crime? Now, the first thing that you will agree with me is the losses in the business. You know, if people steal from the company, that company revenue goes down. You know, they don't make profit. And, in future, when the company does not generate profit or the profit is compromised, if that continues, that company could be out of business. The second thing that could happen, that as an effect of corruption, shareholders can pull out. Once shareholders see that that company is full of corruption, because shareholders are investing money into the business. When they see that the company is corrupt, the staff members, they do as they please. So a lot of shareholders, they begin to pull out because they want to save their money, which is their area of interest. The next effect of corruption is damage in business image, which is the same as reputation. Now, many companies have lost their reputation because of fraud and scandals. Usually, once the damage or the name of the company is damaged, usually nobody will want to invest money in that company. Nobody might want to work for that organization. And number 4 is job losses. What happens is this: eventually, if the corruption is viral, the companies, they begin to cut down, they begin to retrench, because fraud is the loss of money. And once company loses money, it will not afford to hire as many people as they want to. So many people could lose their jobs. And finally, once the company loses money and that behavior is not controlled or stopped, that company could eventually close down, meaning everybody who works there will lose employment. Number 6, we look now at how do you conduct an investigation. Let's say a fellow staff member is convicted or suspected of fraud. Let me say suspected. Now, how do we begin the journey of investigation when somebody is suspected of fraud? Remember, you cannot be convicted until it's confirmed that indeed you are guilty. Now, the first thing that companies do, now this might, vary from company to company, but what I'm presenting to you is usually the basic step or route that companies would follow. The first thing, they assign an investigator. Now, that person could be somebody from your legal department if you have, or it could be an independent person. Now, they appoint somebody who will be investigating that person who's suspected of fraud. And that process can take days, it can take months, and sometimes it can take years. Number 2, they begin the investigation as quick as possible. Now, that process must be quick because sometimes once the staff member suspects that is investigated, some people, they resign, especially when they know that they are guilty, because they know that if I'm charged of corruption, I might lose my pension fund, I might be fired, and if I get fired, I'll have a police record on my name. So what they do, they just resign overnight without notice. Number 3, decide what to do with an employee who is under investigation. Now, once somebody is investigated, if you are the manager of that person, you might decide to put that person on a special leave, or you might decide to let that person work under supervision whilst he's being investigated. Or you might decide to let the person know that you are being investigated, and therefore, whilst you are investigated, you cannot resign. If you resign, the company might press more charges against you. Number 4, you have to establish confidentiality guidelines for the investigators or employees. Now, when the person is investigated, the person is not guilty until confirmed guilty, meaning that process must be very confidential to save the person's image. Number 5, choose discipline or to terminate the employment. Now, if the person is charged or the person is guilty, now what do you do? There are 2 things that companies can do. Route number 1, depending on the nature of the crime, the person can be sent for disciplinary, meaning that person can be asked to pay, or that person can be suspended for a year, for 3 days, for a couple of months. And the next way, or the second option that companies would embark on, is to say we terminate employment with immediate effect. And the person could lose his pension fund. The person could be charged in addition to that. And the last thing that the company could do is to recover the losses. Now, let's say that person has stolen 5,000 rands, or that person stole goods that amount to 5,000 rands. Now, another thing that the company can do, they can recover the money by deducting from that person's salary. And I will leave it here for now. I hope you enjoyed the module. What we'll do, we'll send you the slides, and of course, you'll see on the last slide of the module that if you have any questions, you can send them to our WhatsApp number, or you can send to our academic email address, which is at the bottom of the last slide. I hope you enjoyed the module. I'll see you soon in our next presentation. Thank you.